Is this working? So, when I give the speeches, I actually want to talk about something interesting for the audience, but my PR department always forced me to give you a story of my career, which is the beginning of the speech. And I always get questions, what is the reason for success of my team? And I also get questions as what drives me to move forward? And I was just thinking that there is actually three things which drive me persistently. And today, they are very conveniently set to my favor. What drives me usually, it's challenge, it's responsibility and guilt. And the wonderful thing about today's lecture is because I'm sick, as you can hear from my voice, I feel no guilt if I give you a bad lecture. And I feel no responsibility to give you a good lecture. And the challenge of giving you a good lecture is the only motivation for me to actually continue. So I apologize, but my voice might disappear somewhere in the middle of the lecture. I was just actually diagnosed that I have a sickness. I shouldn't be actually speaking to you today, but obviously, Acronis folks will kill me if I wouldn't, which talks a lot about whether entrepreneurs are actually able to do what they want or they need to do what their team wants. Right, so my talk actually, I've retitled it, Smart is Equal to Digital Future, which correlates with what you just said. So everything is digital. So a little bit about me. I was born in St. Petersburg. The important part of my early life is I was born in this wonderful city. Have any of you been to St. Petersburg? Okay, it's actually very nice. It's very beautiful. It's one of the more beautiful cities in Europe. It's very different from the rest of Russia. And I was specifically studying next to this palace, which is like Versailles. And so I guess because of that, I was lucky. Even though I'm a technologist, I've acquired certain taste for arts from the early life. Then I went to the specialized schools in physics and mathematics, which was one of the top schools in physics and mathematics in Soviet Union. Soviet Union at that time was a little larger than the United States in population and was equally advanced in its science. And then I went to the top science and technology schools at that time in Soviet Union, which is very similar to Caltech, Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology. It has degraded quite a bit over the past 30 years, but at that time was definitely in the top schools in the world. I've actually entered the school in 1988, still in Soviet Union. And over time, I got these degrees, bachelor's in physics, master's in computer science and physics, PhD in computer science, and then they even gave me honorary doctorate. So technically, I'm Dr. Beloussov. And by the way, I'm very often asked, like, okay, when I speak to such audiences, they will ask me, okay, why do you need all these degrees? I mean, like Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, they didn't get any degrees. And the good reminder for all the people who ask this question is that Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, they did not get degrees from one university, which is #1 university in the world, which is called Harvard. And one of the reasons they were successful is that they actually get into Harvard. And a lot of people who work for them and who were successful together with them, they actually graduated. And so it's nice to not get a degree from Harvard. My first two companies were actually quite conventional. They were related to technology a little bit. I will be coughing as a part of my speech, but that doesn't express anything. Sunrise and Rolson, we were manufacturing computers and consumer electronics. Sounds relatively simple, but at the time, we had to design our own consumer electronics. We had our own engineers. We had to design a manufacturing process and build it from scratch. And at some point, we grew to about 5,000 people and $500 million in revenue. Sounds like a lot, but really the margins in this business are tiny. And so, altogether, this business has made for us less money than the software businesses we built thereafter. This business has brought me to Singapore. I first came to Singapore in January 1994. The very same businesses to open logistics and financing center brought me to San Francisco. I came to San Francisco first in May 14, 1995. And I have to tell you, at that time, I was completely ignorant that Singapore would be such a wonderful place by now, 22 years later. And I was also completely ignorant that San Francisco was based in Silicon Valley. I didn't realize that it's very important to be based in Silicon Valley. In fact, Silicon Valley at that time was just sort of becoming super popular. It was already Silicon Valley, so Silicon was already there for many years, but there was still not a dot-com boom. I think Netscape was founded in '94, and it didn't even go public in '95. The person who brought me to Silicon Valley used to work for me before, used to go to the same boarding school as I did for physics and mathematics, and later to Moscow State University. He was studying in Urbana-Champaign. When he brought me to Silicon Valley, he was telling me stories about the fact that, in his university, there is this guy who built Mosaic in this building, and then he moved to Silicon Valley and he founded Netscape, and it's really cool. I was not really very impressed by that at that time. I only realized this later. But by '97, this was '95, right? By '97, it was very clear, and I got involved in first business which was selling computer software here. We were exclusive distributor, franchising distributor of mid-market ERP vendor Solomon Software. And at the very same time, I brought some engineers here, and thanks to predecessor to IDA, NCB, I've started development in Singapore. It is kind of funny, but the fact of the matter is, the reason why we started developing computer software, one of this was, of course, that we've heard that it's very cool, and it's cool to build your own software products for security and maybe for financial security at that time. That's what we thought. But the other reason was that there was a wonderful grant program available from NCB, and this program required us to formalize our business plan and to create a team, and we applied for this program in 1996. We actually was surprisingly approved, even though we were complete foreigners in Singapore. We got the grant in the amount of about $500,000 over some years. We never received the full amount, but it's actually started us in software business in 1996. NCB was converted to IDA. The guy who used to run NCB at that time, Ken Waiso, went to Microsoft. Now he's on the board of IDA, but that's how I started in software business. Now, because of this grant program, which was co-funded by Microsoft, another feature which is interesting in Singapore is that government is always involving industry in any projects they do. When Bill Gates came to Singapore in '97, they didn't find any better company to show to Bill Gates but us. We had a very small team of people, and we had no clue what we're doing, but we were using latest Microsoft technology. Bill Gates spent about 25 minutes with us. He gave a quote to our press release that our product is built on the best, has a great architecture, and that made us feel that we are the best programmers in the world. And through a series of steps, we ended up founding Parallels at that time. In the year 2000, we founded Parallels. It was called SWSoft. It was founded in Singapore in International Plaza. Up until the beginning of 2001, we had about 60 people in Singapore. Over years, it have grown to about 1,150 people, hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, and 10,000 service providers. We sold about 5 million copies of Parallels Desktop. Any of you use Parallels Desktop here? Well, there are a few users. There's always few users in any audience. And so also the interesting thing is that between the other products of Parallels for service providers for the cloud, Plesk, Virtuoso, and automation, we have about 15 million small businesses and 50 million users. And recently we split the company into 4, and we sold one piece to Ingram Micro, which is a large public listed company. I was the CEO of this company up until 2010. One thing which actually makes me proud, and people always think what we have invented, and they told me that I invented Parallels Desktop or something like that. In reality, the only thing we invented is actually containers. And today, containers are used on tens of millions of servers, and it's probably one of the most hot trends in the cloud infrastructure. And when I look at my citation index, I actually filed about 100-something patents on containers. It keeps going up. So I recently realized that I'm not a scientist, but my Hirsch is actually over 20, which is quite funny for not a scientist. And it's all because of patents. One of them is focused on material science at about 36 million, and one of them is focused on anything in technology below $1 million investment, Fistech Ventures. And these funds are still operational. There are actually 7 partners, including me in the funds. So 6 are very much full-blown operational, and I'll talk about this a bit later. In 2013, however, I came back to Acronis, and I came back to operational business. And in fact, when I came back to Acronis, I was thinking that this is actually maybe 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months sort of endeavor to recover Acronis into a good state or better state and hire replacement. But by now, I decided that I will stay with Acronis for a very long time. I really enjoy it. It's in a really, really hot space, and you will see it from the rest of the presentation. Well, one thing we did is we moved headquarters to Singapore. Acronis was actually founded in Singapore. It sounds funny, but it's probably one of the largest software companies founded in Singapore. And that's what it is. Hundreds of millions of revenue, 700 employees, 330 engineers, 500,000 businesses use Opera. Any of you use Acronis? There are some people. Okay, not so many in Singapore. 5 million consumers, 30,000 partners. We sell in 145 countries and 15 languages, and our new products grow over 1,000%. So it's really cool. Now, this speech is not about Acronis. This speech is about trends. And reality is that I'm very often asked to talk about trends. When people look at my bio, they easily understand that I'm partially crazy, partially have attention deficit disorder, so I do a lot of things, and so they think I have a perspective. In reality, I don't have a perspective about a lot of things. I'm not an expert in politics. I'm very often asked about politics because I'm Singaporean, which was born and raised and educated in Russia, and I do a lot of business in US. So everywhere I'm asked about either Russia or Asia or something. I'm not an expert in economics. Just today, I was asked what I think about growth of economy in Asia, whether it will continue or not. I have no clue. It seems that it should be continuing. What do you guys think? Will it continue? Right? And I'm not an expert in general topics, but I'm an expert in how to build medium-sized technology companies. I built several companies with several $100 million in revenue. That's not a lot, but it's not a little. And I'm also specifically expert in storage, software virtualization, automation, cloud, small business applications, and I have some degree of expertise in SkyTech, physics, and generally science. So there are these 3 trends. I mean, this is a very long presentation. I want to make it short because I'm sick, so I'm going to cut through real fast. These trends are very well known: cloud, mobile, social. This presentation was first made about a year ago, and at that time, you can still talk about what's special, but there are some numbers here. $200 billion of cloud services spending in 2015. Depends on how you count it, but a lot. 7 billion mobile subscribers, so everybody is using mobile. There will be more mobile subscribers than people. 74% of adults use social media, of online adults use social media, and 68% of all Americans use social media. So definitely those trends are very widespread. So it's everybody. What do those trends mean? Well, one thing which they mean is they are all based on the fact that there is this phenomenon which used to be called internet, which used to be called World Wide Web before, and now it's called cloud. And what is cloud? I mean, people talk about cloud computing, and in our speeches, we spoke about cloud computing in parallel since about 2006. And so it gets boring by over time. And so we like to think that cloud is dead, because everything is cloud. And the real benefit of the cloud is cloud architecture. It's a different architecture of building information technology. And what is special? So there is 3 things. One of them is network effect, right? And it's well known, Metcalfe law. In the cloud, everything's connected. Everything can be involved. Every device is connected to another device. Every device, even inside the company, is connected to another device. And any person can participate in any business process. That is very special, because the whole value of internet at some point was even exactly in this fact that this was a network where everything can be connected. And over time, it became much more valuable than proprietary networks like AOL or CompuServe or MSN, which were at that time separate, because not everyone was connected to those networks, and not everyone was connected in the same way. The next thing, which is extremely important about cloud, and it makes life different, and the whole difference, is web standards. Web standard is effectively enabling network effect in software that allows easy integration between different components. In the past, And you guys live in the digital world, and you live in the cloud world, so for you, you don't know. But when we started in computing, I first get in touch with Apple computer. I believe I probably first played on the Apple computer around 1985 or 1984, imagine that. It was in a scientific lab of a colleague of my dad. There was an Apple computer, and you couldn't actually move programs from one to another, and you couldn't even use the same the same disk in one and another. One was a cassette, one was a big disk, one was a small disk. Everything was incompatible to that extent. In the cloud, everything's compatible. You can build on top. And finally, cloud is about scaling out. Cloud is about being able to scale to unlimited size, unlimited number of users, unlimited number of devices. And the more you scale, the less you pay per user, per device. With the scale-up architectures of mainframes, this was quite different. Mainframes were very expensive, and they were very expensive per user. And if you wanted to have more users, you would pay more per user, not less per user. Because scale-up architecture would actually be very efficient, would be very powerful, but it will be very expensive at large number of users, and there will be some limit. And at that limit, you will pay a maximum per user. Now, with the scale-out architectures like cloud, the larger you scale, the less you pay. And, of course, one of the underlying things which enable cloud is Moore's law. We'll talk about the fact that it's also dead, just like a cloud. But it's not that dead yet. And so scalable, fast, cheap, super convenient, virtualization, reduced cost, you can build very, very large projects. Anybody could build very large projects. So as a result, what we have is everyone has unlimited access to vast computing resources. Very important. It's a subtle thing, but in the past, if you wanted to build something like Twitter or something like Spotify or something like LinkedIn, all of those things, I believe, used Amazon. You had to buy servers. You have to build a data center. You have to invest in the infrastructure. And so most of people couldn't do it. With cloud, everyone has access to unlimited computing resources, which scale together. The cost of it scale together with the scale of your business, so you can afford it. Everyone is connected. Everyone using very powerful computers. This is just some example. It's outdated already, but Samsung Galaxy S6 is 15 times faster than the computer which can win chess against Kasparov. Actually, my company, Parallels, is one of the sponsors of Magnus Carlsen. Any of you know who is Magnus Carlsen? Okay, he's a chess champion of the world. But he's not quite as popular as Bobby Fischer. So he told me that even iPhone 5 wins against him. So 10 games he plays against iPhone 5. He wins 3. iPhone 5 wins 7. And he has to, sometimes he can win 4, but most of the time he wins 3 or 2, right? So that's very powerful. But at that time, I remember, this was about 2000 something, when Deep Blue won against Kasparov. That was a major achievement, and it's a big cluster which was required. And finally, everybody is using computer all the time. Computer is part of basic instinct. People are addicted to computers. This is just some example. This guy was publishing his mugshot, and he became a cover model because he got 60,000 likes on his mugshot. I'm not going to ask you if you guys like him or not. He looks okay here, right? So this fact that everybody is connected all the time with powerful computers, there is unlimited computing resources, and not only everybody is addicted to computers. You go to a restaurant, you see 3 people or 4 people sitting on the table. They're not talking to each other, they're talking to their phones, right? And that enabled this meta trends. Sharing economy, Uber, HomeAway, Airbnb, ClassPass, that's one of the portfolio companies of ours, Amazon Home Services. Any of you use those services? Uber, everybody must have used Uber, right? It's great, it's quite convenient. Or HomeAway, I just recently used HomeAway. It's amazing. Or Airbnb, actually is a new player. HomeAway is old player, but they are both in shared economy. Instant messengers. Who would imagine? What's special about instant messengers? I've never really understood it before I realized that with post, we would send maybe 1 letter a week or 1 letter a day for some people, or some people with active correspondence, like, I don't know, say, Winston Churchill will send 10 letters a day. With email, I personally send 150 emails a day, right? So it's much faster, right? But with instant messages, people do 800 messages a day on the average. So instant message is just much faster way to communicate. You just send many more messages. It's much more interactive. You cannot send 800 emails a day. I send more emails than anybody in Acronis by the factor of 10. Well, but an average in Acronis by the factor of 10, or maybe by the factor of 7, but I cannot send 800 emails a day. It's impossible. On most of instant messaging networks, people easily send 800 instant messages a day, right? And so those messages are gaining ground. Any of you use Telegram, by the way? It's sort of funny question for me. Okay, there are some people. Okay, it's interesting, but both of the companies which are leaders in instant messages, WhatsApp and Telegram, are founded by people who came out of Soviet Union. So WhatsApp is founded by people from Ukraine. Jan Kaum, he's from Ukraine. And Telegram is founded by the guy who left Russia to Germany, Pavel Durov. So they are sort of related to Russia, to the country when I was born. And in fact, Telegram is slightly better because Germany is better in privacy laws. And it's growing very fast. It's about 100 million users right now. Data-driven automated education. Well, definitely a trend. It's quite clear that at some point education will be much assisted by IT. It's still an area where IT is relatively weak. Most of education is like this. It's quite manual. And data-driven automated healthcare, lots of things to do, literally to save lives. Again, this is an area which is growing very fast. Data-driven automated government, definitely something we can see in Singapore. All of those last three areas, they have to do with the percentage of people which are actively using computers. As soon as a percentage of people which is actively using computers above certain threshold, these trends become relevant. If only few people in a classroom, including schools, only few people in a hospital or being sick, only few people in a country use computers, then those three last things are not yet as relevant. And so they are becoming trends, and there will be major trends over the next 5-10 years. So what's next? Those are very known trends. And again, cloud is everywhere and everything is cloud. Mobile is everywhere and everything is mobile. And social is part of our life. Social is becoming our basic instinct. Most people, if you switch off social, they feel as if they lost hearing or they lost vision, right? And it's really hard. I mean, I've started to do this several times a year. I actually switch off my devices for several days. And you feel a little different, right? But so what are the next big trends? And so here I wanted to talk about this big trends. Again, this was presented first about a year ago, and I came up with this trends even before. The fact of the matter, I present a speech very often, and the trends don't change that often. And so there are 12 plus 1 trends here, which are pretty obvious. One of them is Internet of Things. And this is one of the very old trends. I remember people spoke about the Internet of Things as far back as 1997. So that's about 20 years old trend. It is growing very slowly, but it's accelerating now, and it's definitely already all around us. There is a lot of things around us which are connected to internet, and every day there is more and more things which are connected to internet. And every day there is more and more to do with data those things generate. And you're talking about different things in military, where it's mission critical. You're talking about automation and control in factories and smart houses. This is just some information about the trends. They believe that there will be about 50 billion devices connected in 2020. That's significant change for many parts of IT. For example, it's a change for system management. People used to deal with 1 billion devices. Now you deal with 50 billion devices. For example, it's significant change for internet infrastructure, because you have much more traffic and you have many more devices which send traffic. It's significant trend for storage, because there is so much data these devices generate. And so if you want to learn more about it, I just recommend to read this book, Silent Intelligence. Anybody of you read this book? It's a pretty good book. It's written by a friend. He used to work for Qualcomm for a very long time. Qualcomm is one of the leaders in Internet of Things area. And there is another trend. I mean, I've sent this slide to him, to this guy. He's on the left side, on the right side, Daniel Abadovsky. he told me that I have to talk about fog computing. And every time I give the speech, I think that I should delete it because I'm not sure what it is, but it's supposed to, any of you know what is fog computing? It's computing on the edge of all this Internet of Things devices. Do you know what is fog computing? You're supposed to know. Anyways, it's supposed to be very cool, right? So next trend is robots. So what is really enabling robots and enabling to a great extent is one of the challenges of robots was that they needed a very powerful computers. But today, smartphones are not only powerful, but also have a lot of sensors in them. And so that really enables robots to grow much faster. Is it because they directly use smartphones, like in many of those toys? Or because they can use the same components, which are now widely available and very inexpensive, right? So this is one of the first robots, Roomba. Any of you have Roomba? So you see many, right? 2/3 of people supposedly name their Roombas. Do you have a name for your Roomba? Yeah, that's pretty weird. That's definitely a first very useful robot. There are robots like this for specialized things like cleaning windows in high buildings or cleaning hospital yards and so on. This is another example. This is a new robot which you can use as a Segway, or it can be a butler, recently released. This is a BMW, which is starting to use robots in Germany to collaborate with people, to sort of give people assistance in a production line. And finally, just telepresence robotics market is expected to be $13 billion this year. In fact, I was one of the first people who bought this double, and I've installed it in my Seattle office. At that time, I was still involved in Parallels, and my employees sort of made fun of it. They put a red shirt on it, and that's my face on the robot, and they sort of scared of me there. It's really cool. Any of you have tried this double? It's a very basic thing. You just install iPad in it, and you can basically travel all around the office and shout at employees and scare employees. It's quite quiet, so this is actually, the company is growing very, very fast. They just crossed $10 million in revenue, and they're just releasing the second version of this robot, and it's really very, very simple. It's just this thin below. It's kind of like Segway and an iPad on top, and you can manage it from your iPhone. We have those robots installed in every office. We have one in Moscow, one in Boston, and one in Singapore, and anybody can connect and drive it around. It's not actually that widely used because it's not so convenient just yet, but I believe it would be. Trend 3 is drones, right? It's another very big trend. FAA finally certified Amazon drones. So Amazon drones would be used to deliver. Amazon believes that it's very important to deliver stuff within 30 minutes because it enables emotional purchases, like I want this shoes or I want this dress, and you buy it, and in 30 minutes it arrives at your place. Now this is Transport Canada, which actually released 1,700 commercial drones. They already certified. DHL is flying drones to deliver packages to the remote islands in North Sea. Singapore Post already used drones, right? So it's announced that in October 8th, 2015, drone used to deliver this package from one island to another island. I've actually gave this as an example at some point, and they told me this is not honest because the postman have put stuff on the drone, and the postman on another side catch the drone and took stuff off the drone. But this is just a matter of time before it will become honest. That's what they expect to have in US, 325,000 people to have registered drones. And this is an example of a drone which is built by Chinese, which can actually ride you around. So it can actually get you to travel, I believe, at about 100 kilometers per hour. I'm not sure how reliable it is, but you can test it, right? So drones are really amazing. I mean, we are actually investigating drones in Acronis to do data downloads. Believe me or not, networks are quite slow. And while we started this investigation, we found a number of startups which allow you to rent drones, and they do funny stuff. The most successful of them kind of reminds me of the Linux time. I remember at the time when Linux was popular in 97, 98, 99, there was one company which was very successful in Linux. And then, another company bought it, and then I remember CEO complained on one conference, and when they bought it, they realized that the company was primarily selling penguins. So it didn't sell much Linux, but it made the toys, and people will buy penguins. So here, the drones are used to make selfies. So the most successful implementation is you pay a certain amount of money, and within 20 minutes, the drone arrives and make a selfie of you from the air. and in any geographic location around that area in US. Next drone is definitely connected cars. So cars are very stupid devices, if you consider that. And in fact, they're very dangerous, right? So people are always afraid. I fly about 10 times a month, and over the past 15 years, and I'm probably one of the most afraid of flying person I know. I hate it, but planes are safe. Cars are very unsafe, right? Every one of us have somebody in a major traffic accident. And in my 44 years, I have a number of friends and some relative who died in traffic accidents. And at the same time, cars are major, huge industry. It's $1.5 trillion and 75 million units, right? So modern car produce about 25 gigabytes of data per hour. And so, that's basically the connectivity market for cars will be about $200 billion by 2020 from $35 billion right now. So it's growing very, very fast. There is a lot of startups in connected car areas in all parts of connected cars, in connected motorbikes, connected cars. This is a startup in our portfolio, a very rapidly growing company in New York. The typical application is to improve the insurance coverage or improve the service coverage based on the driving information. If you can collect information in real time, you can see if the person is driving carefully or driving recklessly and where is it going, and you can predict when he needs service, and you can charge him more or less for service warranty, and you can charge him more or less for insurance. And this is a self-driving car. That's the next generation trend. Self-driving cars. This is Mercedes on the streets of San Francisco. They promised to do in 2030. I was invited with this speech to McKinsey talk to a semiconductor industry. And there was a head of Mercedes self-driving car division. And I turned to him and I told him, it's written here 2030. Is it true? And he said, yeah, 2025, 2030, it will be on the streets, right? So I don't know if you've seen it. It's pretty cool, this car. There is a lot of things you can do in the car if you don't need to drive it, right? And nothing funny. You can read a book I meant or prepare for class, right? So Google have actively using these cars. I believe I was told they're driving many hundreds or maybe thousands of miles every day and being tested. And so they're working. They're not so perfect, but they're working better and better. And of course, Elon Musk is very rapidly expanding Tesla platform into being an assisted driving car. So there is a connected car, there is assisted driving car, and there is a self-driving. So Tesla is very rapidly becoming assisted driving. Hopefully that will make our roads much safer, right? Huge market. One of the things which is interesting about this market, and I've recently spoke to the company which is a market leader in connected car platform. The company is called Harman. Harman Kardon, you know those, the audio, but they also make connected car platform. It's a highly fragmented market. There is really no applications yet. 50% of market, for example, is a QNX operating system, but there is a wide variety of other operating systems, and there is a wide variety of chips. 90% is ARM, but different implementation. 10% is Intel. So really, each car maker today making a connected car for themselves. In the future, I believe it will be consolidated, and it will open itself for applications. And at that time, it will be great. And again, this is just cars, not counting motorbikes, and I believe not counting trucks. 3D printers. Another big trend, which is promising to change manufacturing. This is a 3D heart model. The 3D printing industry is promised to reach 5 billion. This is just an industry of making 3D printers. So really, it's not about making 3D printers. It's about what you can make with 3D printers. And there is a lot of different things. I always had this personal sort of benchmark is that if in my vicinity I meet 3D printers, that means that if I invest in companies which do something with 3D printers, or if I have customers or partners, then it becomes a reality. This is just one company which allows you to order your 3D printing copy. I think it's based in Seattle, and it's a customer of one of our startups. This is an example of a very cheap 3D printer with very good resolution, 50 microns. And this one is made in Canada. It's only costs $179, right? So it's becoming very inexpensive. When the 3D printers only became popular just yet, my wife gave me a present for birthday. I think it was about 3 years ago, of 3D printer. I never was able to make it work. It costed $4,000 or $5,000, and it was very bulky and ugly. And then I gave it to our IT department. They tried to make it work. They were never able to make it work as well. And in 3 years now, you can buy one for $179, and it really works. And what does 3D printers mean? That means that everything becomes software defined. And that also means that everything can be customized, because today you all sit on these very similar chairs, and there is a lot of components which can only be profitable if they're made in volume. If you manufacture everything on 3D printers, and there is nothing which makes 3D printers more expensive in theory to manufacture things than any other method, you can make all of it customizable. You can download your chair, modify it to the way you want it, print it, instead of going to IKEA's dead, right? And just assemble it the way you want at home. And this guy made a motorbike like this, printed, right? So, 3D printers are a funny trend. So one of my employees, he was a distinguished engineer in Microsoft, and he joined us as a CTO. At some point, we had to push him out because he went crazy with about 3D printers. He decided that he wanted to invent new methods of new powder for 3D printers, which would allow to print integrated circuits. And so if you can print integrated circuits, you can print a TV completely, except maybe a CPU, which requires more precise printing, but everything else you can print. And so he had all kinds of explosions in his home, and he wouldn't show up to work. I think he patented a number of his instances. They can print some very basic integrated circuits right now, but I think it's just a matter of time before you can print anything. Then fintech revolution, that's very clear that it's happening. The banking system of the world is very antiquated. It's about 600, 500 years old. The first bank I believe I've seen was in the city called Siena in Italy. That's what they call, of course, something like banks were before. It's disrupted from every angle. Lending Club IPO brought it to about $10 billion valuation. We are actually investor in a number one company in the same area in UK called Zopa. Payment space is being conquered from a variety of angles by mobile operators, by carriers and retailers. Again, it's amazingly stupid space, right? If you think about it, you have to carry those wallets with credit cards. That's stupid, right? It's enough to carry a mobile phone. It knows everything about you, and it's much more sophisticated than credit card, right? So credit card has a tiny little chip. It's very easy to forge. Try to forge a mobile phone, much harder. And it's only a matter of time when it will happen. Now, of course, there is Bitcoin. Any of you use Bitcoin? Right? Any of you done something with Bitcoin? Right. So Bitcoin is it has made a lot of splashes, but when I gave this speech first, I believe it was about I'm just thinking maybe 3 years ago with Bitcoin. I was talking about that this is something between a stock market and Las Vegas, right? Bitcoin. In reality, Bitcoin converted into just blockchain, and so it's separated from Bitcoin. And blockchain is very effective method of authenticating information, making sure that information is original based on distributed cryptographic proof, which allows to not have a central authority. That's very convenient. Think about it, is that what is the problem with digital information? I've not realized it for a long time. I have to tell you, I'm very ignorant of technologies this way. So Bitcoin has appeared on the horizon, what, 4 years ago? Right? And I've only realized what I'm telling you maybe a month ago. Before that, I was not really sure. But the thing is, digital data has a very amazing and unlucky quality. It can be easily forged. You can easily copy it, right? You can never know if the digital data is real. It can easily be modified, right? And that makes digital data not very valuable, right? So how do you know that a certain document is the right document? It can have been modified if it's digital. And so you have to keep a copy with some central authority and verify the copy that it's accurate. Or Bitcoin technology, what blockchain technology allows you to do, it allows you to do hundreds of times or thousands of times more authentications of the fact that the document is authentic. And that allows to revolutionize a lot of different parts of the industry, including financial, including healthcare, including education, including insurance, anywhere where you need to ensure that the information is original. And so a lot of investment in this area. This is just some examples of investments which happened last year. Blockchain is not just a technology, it's also a very large framework which allows to do many, many different things. So if you haven't looked at it, I encourage that you do. It might be useful in a variety of ways, way a part of blockchain. Wearables, it's an old trend, right? So it started from, that's a prediction for this $500 million, $50 billion in 2018. Fitbit, have started a very, very long time ago, right? And then it went to about 21 million units in sales right now, and it's growing very, very fast. This is just example of other wearable from the top manufacturer of high-end watches. And Gartner expects that this market will be growing at about 50%, and it's about 11.5 billion this year. So it's a large market. Any of you wear Apple Watch? You? 1, 2? Anybody else? Right? So not so many people, right? So reality is that from my standpoint, the big revolution will happen is when these wearables will become really useful for our lives. Today, they don't really have the right sensors. There is a lot of research in physics and in technology to bring the right sensors into this, which can use medical level qualities of your blood or of your pulse, of your ECG, which can really prolong your life and solve your health problems. And that will similar to connected car. So you think about connected car, well, you will think the same about connected human. So connected human will have a cheaper medical insurance and will have a better medical service, same way as a connected car. And so everybody will wear them because it will just be effectively cheaper to wear them than not to wear them. And not necessarily it will be a smartwatch. I'm not wearing a watch ever, so I probably wouldn't be wearing a smartwatch, but some kind of sensors which will measure my blood, what is in my blood and what is happening with my heart will definitely be very useful. For example, I wouldn't be sick today if I would have had one of those sensors which some of the people are contemplating. I would have been cured about a week ago. But I only did a blood test yesterday, and I only knew the blood test result today, and I will only start taking antibiotic tomorrow with this saying I could have been cured right at the moment when I was getting sick.